Coming up on this edition of Cogeco News, some encouraging news concerning the coronavirus. Remembering those who lost their lives on the job. And we learn more about 30th overall pick Dallin Wakely. Welcome inside the Your TV studio for this Tuesday edition of Cogeco News. Truly local, my name is Clark Heipel. As of this afternoon, just one active case of the coronavirus in the North Bay Parry Sound District, but has enough testing been done? That continues to be the common concern among area residents. We pose that very question to Medical Officer of Health, Dr. Jim Chirico. It appears that testing for the coronavirus is ramping up.
Initially, there were problems provincially and globally with trying to get enough swabs as well as the testing capacity in the labs. But that has all changed, and now we have a real effort moving forward to do far more testing.
And what needs to be in place for that to happen?
Well, in order to do that, right now our focus is going to be on long-term care homes and retirement homes to get the staff and the residents done. So there's a lot of logistics involved to arrange that throughout our entire district.
Right now, are any people being refused for tests that come in saying, I have these symptoms, are you able to test me?
When they have symptoms, we're pretty much referring all of them to the testing centers. And it's then up to the clinician, after they do an assessment, to decide if they need to be tested or not. There's pretty wide spectrum of symptoms, and so for the most part, if you're symptomatic, you will get tested.
Meanwhile, the latest modeling from Health Canada was released today, and it is encouraging. The social distancing measures are helping. However,
we have to be very careful, and we cannot assume that things are over. They aren't. We know that community spread, that there may be a little bit of, has been some flattening of the curve, and so that's very encouraging. However, the main problem right now are the outbreaks that continue to rise in long-term care homes. They're the most vulnerable. They're the ones that we've seen a significant number of deaths in. So that's going to be our focus right now. So we don't want to let up on the distancing measures. We still are advocating and pleading with the public to stay at home, only go out for essential trips, and to really practice social and physical distancing is still very important to do to protect the most vulnerable.
Indeed, there is some light at the end of the coronavirus tunnel in the province of Ontario. Premier Doug Ford released the early framework for eventual reopening of the province. Nipissing MPP Vic Fedeli spoke during that very press conference on Monday. Today, he joins us over Skype to discuss.
We've come so far. All of our citizens in Ontario have worked so hard to get us. Think about only a few weeks ago when the Chief Medical Officer of Health said when the Premier released the modeling, 80,000 people could get sick, 1,600 could die. We really flattened the curve and brought some ease to our absolutely wonderful frontline healthcare workers. They're still incredibly taxed, but this brought some ease to them. And quite frankly, we didn't have the high numbers because people stayed home.
As you release the essential business list and updated that list, will it be done in reverse now? Will you be making lists of what business can open?
Yeah, we'll start with stage one, certain businesses and certain rules that we can also loosen. Perhaps more people allowed for gatherings, different settings will be open that weren't before, outdoor spaces, those types of things, plus specific businesses that will make sense to be opened at this time of year.
Is that weeks away or months away still?
I would say some are hopefully days away. I don't want to be overly optimistic, but you know, we really need people to understand we're still not over the curve yet, but there are a few things that could safely be open that make sense to people, and so you'll start to see something in hopefully days, and a little more in the next week or so, and then a little more in 2 weeks until we eventually get to full opening. But it will all depend on the health aspect. This is not because we want to open them or we want to close them. This is what the health tells us we can open and close.
I have seen outpouring of support for Premier Doug Ford, staunch Liberals saying he's doing an excellent job. What does that mean for the spirit of Ontario, knowing that no matter which party you are for, we're all working together?
Well, the Premier's been very clear. There's no politics involved. You look at, as he calls it, his new BFF, his new best friend, Chrystia Freeland. They talk all the time. We've been working hand in hand with the federal government. I've been on the phone with my federal counterparts, federal ministers, as we talk about what supports do we need. We need water, food in every home, and a roof over your head. Let's get to that. And we've made sure that there are no gaps and no duplication. And so, there'll be lots of time in the future, I'm sure, for all the analysis to be done on what was done right and what was done wrong. But right now, it's just shoulder to the wheel.
Smash the curve. That's the latest approach from North Mayor Al MacDonald when referring to limiting the number of coronavirus cases in our area. At last check, there is one active case of COVID-19 in the North Bay Parry Sound District. Mayor MacDonald joined us as well on Skype this Tuesday.
It was bang on. They put a plan together, but they cannot move forward until they get to the approvals from the healthcare professionals. There's no question that we all want business to reopen and people to start working again, but safety is absolutely the number one priority. So I believe they made the right decision just to make sure that we're all going in the same direction. Believe in that they have to, if they're going to make any changes in the province, it has to be provincially wide. And we take our advice from our local medical officer of health, and you see our numbers. We've smashed it. We haven't just flattened the curve. Kudos to our citizens that have really stepped up, but really believe in the province's approach, not to just open things up and go backwards.
More on that point, looking at our neighbors down south where the virus has spread exponentially compared to our numbers, how lucky are we to be in the north where population's lower?
I think it's a number of factors, Clark, and you mentioned too, being a little bit further away from the larger centers and just the smaller communities. But we've seen smaller communities hit hard as well, and I think it really speaks to everyone pulling together, not just City Hall, but our community partners, the media, our citizens, our frontline workers that have kept up the message of, please stay home, physical distance, good hygiene. So I think we all can take credit for our low numbers. And when I say all, I mean 52,000 of us.
Budget pressures at an all-time high, and there was an article concerning expense reports as well as fringe benefits. Is there a thought to perhaps clamp down on the amount given for expenses, being that pressures at an all-time high?
Yeah, so we have a hiring freeze. We've unfortunately laid off over 80 people. We're not moving ahead with our summer student program. We're taking incredible steps to watch our budget. Our pressure is more coming from our agency boards and commissions than internal.
The homelessness situation and the homeless shelter at Pelangio, we haven't heard much since the opening. What's the latest on that location?
That's usually a good sign, actually, and I haven't heard too much either. But kudos to Mary Davis and her team and our community that have stepped up to look after our most vulnerable population. There's been virtually no news. Last time I asked Mary how we were doing, she said, we're doing great. So the fact that I'm not really answering a lot of questions out there tells me that everything tends to be, or we believe is running in the right order.
Meanwhile, the Calendar and Area Food Bank is bracing for a tidal wave in clients as the COVID pandemic has forced many people out of work. Despite the increase in demand, the food bank has had to reduce the amount of volunteers as well to ensure social distancing measures are adhered to.
We're holding really well. thanks to the support that we're getting from the community, from the local businesses as well. Also from the municipalities and the townships. They've been amazing. The volunteer fire department have offered their services should we ever need any help with lifting or deliveries. They've put a shout out that they will be available for that as well. The community is just, it's been overwhelming, the support that they've given us.
And what are you hearing from clients that come in? What are they saying? Like, is it a general theme of hard times? Are you hearing similar things?
Mostly they're nervous. They're just, I mean, we've never gone through anything like this before. So they're very cautious. They're grateful for the way that we've adjusted things to keep their safety foremost. But it is awkward for them to adjust to a new system of having to call in their orders. But they're doing really well. But we really want to emphasize that we don't want anyone to go without. So whether it's a family, it's an individual, it's a senior, if there's a problem and for whatever reason that they're in self-isolation and they can't get out, to still call us and we will make sure that they have food.
But there are many families and perhaps seniors that don't normally come to a food bank, but with these times, a lot of people are out of work, maybe not knowing where the next paycheck is coming. We're definitely open for them to come.
Today is a very important day for the labor movement, and the pandemic was not going to stop those involved from marking the National Day of Mourning. They went virtual on this day from a number of locations. Labor Council President Henri Giroux met with our Greg Estabrooks to discuss the state of labor in this pandemic.
We know, especially in long-term care, where a lot of people got affected by COVID-19, residents and staff, and a lot of, in the labor movement also, a lot of people, we've had at least 3 or 4 deaths that we know of in Ontario, and from COVID, and it's something that we're worried about. Well, you know, the thing is that we want to make sure if you want those people to go to work, they have to be protected. And we need to have the proper N95, we have a proper gown and everything that, you know, if it's 6 months ago, you were going from one room to another and you were taking your mask off when you go to the other room, and this time, 6 months later, it's okay to keep your mask on, it doesn't jive. And that's the way it is in a lot of places, especially in private place. And that's what we have to try to correct that. And if the government wants us to be out there as essential workers to do the work, then they need to protect us to make sure that we are safe and sound and that we are be able to go to work without worrying about what could happen and what you could bring home.
Giroux was the NDP candidate provincially in 2018. I asked him his assessment of the Conservative government and how it's handling this crisis.
Well, it depends who you talk to. Depends where workplaces. I mean, I was on a phone call on Monday with the Ontario Federation of Labour. We did virtual again. 75 people of us on phone, and hearing some horror stories out there from employers that don't really care about what's going on, as long as the bottom line is they don't want to spend the money to get the gowns or to get the supply that needs to be done. And again, the government should be pushing a lot stronger to try, especially here in Ontario, to try to get companies to actually push to get those equipment that is needed, those N95, the mask and the gowns.
We have reached break time here on this Tuesday edition of Cogeco News. Stay tuned. Much more local news, weather, and sports, including the Entertainment Insider. All that and more right after this. It's time for another installment of the Entertainment Insider with none other than Adam Contal. This Tuesday, he takes a look at a classic. Way back in 1992, this movie was released, A League of Their Own, starring Tom Hanks and Gina Davis.
Hey everybody, it's Patrick Conta, the Entertainment Insider. I think one of the things that a lot of us are missing during this time of quarantine and lockdown is baseball. Well, sports in general, but I know in particular, I miss watching the Jays. I miss watching anybody take the field. So when I start to get that itch and I start missing some of the things that I can no longer watch out in the real world, I often turn to the world of Hollywood. Such was the case this past week when I've decided to do a classic review looking back at one of my all-time favorite sports movies and easily my favorite baseball movie of all time, A League of Their Own. This is my favorite movie for a number of different reasons. I grew up on this film. This one was introduced to me very early on in my childhood and has a lot of great stuff to love about it. First and foremost, this is an incredibly quotable movie. All you have to say is, there's no crying in baseball, and everybody knows what you're talking about. Of course, there are tons of other lines. I can pretty much quote this movie line for line almost. I've seen it so many times. But the comedic timing is really fantastic here, with Tom Hanks really showing off his chops as a comedian. You know, we see him in a lot of dramatic fare these days. I think a lot of people, especially who are kind of new to the work of Tom Hanks, really forget how great he is at delivering some great comedy. This is really a story about sisterhood, and not just the familial type, although that does exist between Dottie and Kit, the two main characters. It also is about the sisterhood of women in general, and they use a really fantastic backdrop to tell this story, which is the All-American Girls Baseball League, which was in existence while men were off defending the United States in World War II. It is a fascinating story, which obviously is more than a little fictionalized based upon these characters, but it really tells a great story and overlooks a lot of what was happening during that time frame. But more than that, it's also a really good sports movie too. You get to see these players come together as a team. There's a really great, of course it ends at the World Series in the final game, seventh game. And there's a lot of drama that kind of builds. And even if you haven't seen this movie, the ending kind of takes a little bit of a left turn. It's not the kind of typical sports movie ending, but I think it's the best ending for this film. Now, looking to the future, this does kind of tie into next week's episode as well. Netflix is debuting a new documentary on May the 1st about two women who were actual players in the All-American Girls Baseball League. And I'm going to be talking about that movie next week.
Very much looking forward to it. Let's head to a quick break, and our Greg Esterbrooks has your 5-day weather forecast right after this.
Weather is brought to you by Canadore College. Great things happen here.
Welcome back, everybody. Weather time here on Tuesday. Temperatures have been warming up a little bit today. Temperatures will continue to warm up a little bit each day this week until the end of the week, when we could see a high as 16 degrees, but lots of cloud in the sky right now, lots of cloud in the sky the rest of the week, and some rain on and off for the next couple of days as well. Let us go now to the 5-day forecast brought to you by Environment Canada and Canadore College. Overnight tonight is going to continue to be cloudy, low of 3 above. Cloudy on Wednesday morning, then rain in the afternoon. Winds east at 30, high of 11, UV index 4 or moderate. Rain continuing overnight Wednesday with a low of 7 degrees. Moving on to Thursday, periods of rain again, high of 11. Cloudy overnight Thursday and a chance of a shower, being a pretty good one at 60, low of 5 above. Friday, the 1st of May. A mix of sun and cloud and a high of 16. That was a pause for effect. On Friday night, cloudy periods, low of 4 above. Saturday, a mix of sun and cloud and a high of 15. But clouding over Saturday night, pretty good chance of a shower, low of 5 above. The normals for this time of the year are 14 and 2 on Monday, pretty close. 13 was the high and 0 was the low. That is it for the weather for this Tuesday. When Clark comes back, the latest on the battalion, especially their picks in round 2 and round 3. Did they get steals? Every GM says that, but in this case, they might be right. Sports after this.
Sports is brought to you by Tag Construction for all your construction needs.
Welcome back inside the studio. It's time for your sportscast. As our Greg Esterbrook writes, drafts are more than a one round, and the battalion need a number of their draft picks to make an impact. The club got a player in the second round named Dallin Wakely, who was supposed to go high in round 1. Club GM Adam Dennis talks with Greg via Zoom about the team's second round and third round selections.
For sure, and I mean, it comes right back to the first pick. We felt really fortunate because there was a lot of conversation. Do we go with a D, a center, a what? We felt like we were able to grab one of the top centers at the 30th pick. And he wasn't a guy that we spent a ton of time interviewing because, quite frankly, we just, in every forecast that we had seen, didn't see the scenario that he was going to be there. There were some other guys that we felt might have slipped, but to see Dallin at that point was definitely eye-opening. So we made some quick calls on the fly where we were at the draft table, just finding out a little bit more about him, talking to the agent, talking to the family, and he was thrilled to be selected by North Bay, and we're thrilled to have him.
And you also inked a defenseman who you drafted in the third round. Tell us a little bit about him, because I know you're really high on him as well.
Yeah, sure. Tanias is a guy that I've got really high hopes for. He's a big physical defenseman that appreciates playing the defensive end, but he also can skate. I know if you ask him, he's going to tell you that he's a shutdown defenseman. He's also the captain for his team. He's got a really big frame. He skates the game. He had 19 points in 25 games, so not bad for a defensive defenseman. But he brings a lot of maturity to his game. Where a lot of the kids that come into the league right away, they want to make the home run pass every time. They want to put it through 3 sets of skates. Tanias does a really good job. He efficiently connects at the zone. He can, separate forwards from pucks in our end, and he can make a really good, mature decision with the puck, making that good first pass, and then he can, with his skating ability, he can follow up the play and put himself in some offensive opportunities.
We have reached the conclusion of this Tuesday edition of Cogeco News. Before we let you go on this April the 28th, we want to salute frontline workers, from grocery store workers to paramedics to firefighters and all the workers in between. Thank you for everything you've done. It looks like these paramedics are about to enjoy some pizza at the paramedic building on Seymour, and some very well-deserved pizza. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your service to our community, keeping us all safe. That does it for this edition of Cogeco News. Stay safe, and Greg Estabrooks will return for Cogeco News live at 5 on Wednesday. We will see you then.